From the 1700s to the early 1800s, the relationship between First Nations and the French and British was based on military alliances and trade. The Crown did not have any control over the day-to-day lives of First Nations communities. Over time, the Crown no longer needed a military alliance with First Nations. Canada began to see First Nations as a policy problem that needed to be solved. With the steady growth of settlement, the Crown began to dispossess First Nations of their land. Land was sold and money was given to First Nations in return, but in a very unpredictable and unorganized way that often did not honor what had been agreed upon. Around the early 1860s, a major shift happened in how First Nations money was handled. In a move towards more formalized control, the Receiver General, the government's accountant, would hold on and invest the money on behalf of First Nations. In this new arrangement, 10% was taken off by the Crown, kind of like an administrative tax, while the rest, in theory, was to be held in trust by the Crown for individual bands. During this time, dozens of funds were created and combined into the Indian Trust Fund. A few years later, Britain stopped providing funding for Indian affairs. Canada's solution for dealing with this new responsibility? To use the money in the Indian Trust Fund to fund First Nations Crown relations. Basically, the Crown stole and used First Nations' own money to pay for the Crown's treaty obligations. Indian trust money was also used to pay for colonial infrastructure, growing the wealth of the state while contributing to the impoverishment of Indigenous peoples. Over time, more and more rules were implemented, restricting how First Nations could spend their money in these funds. What began as a relationship based in alliance, slowly and insidiously morphed into a full-blown project of assimilation, with the Crown wielding First Nations' own money as their choice weapon of control. Disorganization, theft, and manipulation of the fund exemplifies the financial relationship that continues today between First Nations and Canada.